afternoon and welcome to North London, Gwyn Ashton.
Nice to be here.
And Gwyn's come to talk to us about the new album, Radiogram. So Gwyn, perhaps start off by telling us about the concept behind the album, how it came together.
Okay, I've always liked to maintain a certain rawness with my recordings. I prefer the sound of older records to modern production. I like a lot of modern production techniques, but I like the sound of old vinyl. So I wanted to try and replicate the tonality of some of my favourite records that I listened to on vinyl when I was a kid. And I think I got pretty close with this one.
Yeah, I think you did actually. And you've got a lovely selection of vintage instruments on there and vintage equipment. Yeah, I think certainly the tracks reminded me of some of my favourite tracks from that era. In particular, the second track, is it "Fortunate Kind"? I think.
Oh yeah.
Recalled to me "Sway" by the Stones and that band song "The Weight" as well.
Yeah.
And a pretty good hook line. But are there any stories behind any of the songs?
Yeah, well, I wrote that one on a train to Hamburg. I had a whole carriage to myself. It was Christmas one year, and I just went over there for something to do, and I was just sort of going to a friend's place. It lived just outside Hamburg, and I had a guitar with it. I just bought this guitar in a shop in Mannheim, near Heidelberg, and I wrote that. It was basically, it's not a love song. It sounds like a love song, but it was written about contemplating being away from Australia at Christmas time, being the other side of the world, just travelling in the snow on a train, you know.
I'm rolling into Hamburg. I've been away for oh so long. Been traveling around this countryside, so far from my home. I'm a million miles from your sweet smile, but you're always on my mind. Don't you know that you make me feel like the fortunate kind?
So do you miss Australia still?
Yeah, of course I do. Yeah, I love the beach and, you know.
I mean, I saw you, I think,
friends.
So you came to London, was it around about 94, 95?
96, yeah.
And I saw you at a Pete Feenstra gig, and it must be 97 or 98. In fact, I saw several gigs. And you've been in England more or less ever since, haven't you, I think?
Yeah, I've been backwards and forwards. I go over to Europe a lot and tour.
Yeah.
And to
home to
America a few times, just to sort of hang out.
Home to Australia as well?
I've been there a few times, yeah.
Do you gig there when you go back?
Yep, absolutely. I always try to get a few in.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't understand why anybody would want to come to England, really. I mean,
well, I kind of miss, doing a gig with everybody talking around you all the time. So I go back to Australia to get my share of that.
Yeah. So we'll flip around just as we're talking about Australia. What's the scene like in Australia?
I'm pretty out of touch with it now. It's always had quite a strong roots and blues scene, and jazz and blues and rock. There were a lot of migrants in the 60s, like myself. We came over from Wales when I was a kid, and so a lot of the English migrants brought their record collection over, and it was a very different scene in those days. It could take a year before a single would be released in Australia that was released in England. So the migrants had come over with these records and do cover versions of those songs, and then it wouldn't be till a year later the original had hit the shores, and people would go, "Oh, that's the Hollies doing a cover of a Twilight song," and it's like, no, it's the other way around actually. Yeah.
So were you obviously were around when the Stones and the people like that first came to Australia?
Yeah.
And that must have created quite a stir, I imagine.
Yeah, well, Adelaide, which was my hometown, had the biggest ever crowd to greet the Beatles in the world. There were 300,000 people lining the streets just to wave, hello.
Yeah.
That would have been incredible. Yeah, it's a bit like when I go home.
Yeah.
You know, I go to the airport and $500,000 these days, but, you know, it's not a big deal as it was for the Beatles. So.
Yeah, that's the way it goes. So coming back to this brand new album, Gwyn, you were telling me earlier about the way you actually recorded it.
Yeah. Yep. We just set it up in a room, sort of about 4 times the size of this, at a friend's farmhouse in Buckinghamshire, near Oxford, and I recorded it on my laptop with a bunch of outboard gear. I got nice preamps and microphones and all the stuff that you got to have. One mic on the drum kit, one on the guitar. Did the vocals at the same time. We just baffled it all off with bits of drum cases and perspex screens and stuff that I had lying around the house.
So did you add the bass afterwards? Was the bass?
Yeah, I put bass on it afterwards, and then suddenly all these people that I knew volunteered to put tracks on. So I got Mark Stanway and Don Airy and Robbie Blunt.
And you've got a blues legend on there, Kim Wilson from the Fabulous Thunderbirds. How did you achieve that?
Well, we did a festival with him in Belgium 6 months prior to that, and we kind of sort of hung out and swapped phone numbers, and he was happy to talk to somebody that knew how to speak English, I think.
Yeah.
And I said to him, "Do you want to play on doing an album?" He said, "Yeah, I'll play on it." And so we went to America a few months later and couldn't find him. And then we found him again on the next trip over, and he said, "Oh, too bad we couldn't get that track together." And I said, "Well, I've got my laptop with me." So we went back to his house and recorded the track.
Yeah.
So that was, I think we got him at a good time.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite a coup to get him on there, because the Fabulous Thunderbirds are kind of a legend, aren't they? Really.
Yeah.
One of the very best. And Don Airy, what's the story behind getting Don Airy on there?
I played with him a few times before in the past. He runs a festival in Great Granson every year, and he's invited us to play at that several times. And he played on my Prohibition album, and there was a track there, For Your Love. I could really hear Don playing on that, so I rang him up and said, "Do you want to do a track?" And he said, "Shoot it over, and I'll do it."
Right.
Caught up with him at a Deep Purple gig in Hollywood at the Greek Theatre.
Yeah. Now, when I first saw you in North London in the 90s, you had a trio lineup.
Yeah.
2 guys. Did the 2 guys who were with you come over from Australia with you, or did you?
No. My bass player eventually came over about a year later, but he went back. I can't remember which lineup that would have been.
Yeah. But what led to the change to go into the duo lineup?
I'd been to see Tony Joe White, and I was always into Hound Dog Taylor, and kind of heard a bit of the White Stripes and the Black Keys, and I thought, well, that's kind of interesting. I like doing some quirky things, not just do straight, typical what you'd hear everybody else do. So I just thought, okay, let's try and adapt that. So unlike those guys, I do use octave pedals and loops and guitar loops and stuff. So I figured it might be a good idea to do something like that just to revitalise the blues a little bit and get away from the power trio, Hendrix, Stevie Ray, and go towards a bit more of a Mississippi direction. Yeah, and my drummer at the time, a young lad, he was playing in a band with Robert Plant's son, and I remember one gig we did, the only people in the room were my drummer's parents, and Robert Plant and his son, and Robert was adamant that we did not get a bass player. He was very specific. By the way, he pushed his hand down on the table and said, "Don't get one." When I was talking about bass players with him, and he said, "Don't get one."
Yeah,
so Well,
do you find it? You get more.
I've got your approval.
Yeah.
I've got. Yeah, a lot of people say, "Oh, we miss the bass," when they see us, but when they hear us, they think that we do have a bass player because of the octave and whatnot. So.
Yeah. And no doubt you're Killer Kev Hickman. That's a good name, isn't it?
Yeah, Killer Kev.
He's pretty strong on the bass drum, I imagine, as well to underpin.
Yep.
Yeah.
We have a few little things that we do to make up for the lack of instrumentation on stage. So quite often you'll see a band play and you won't hear exactly what the bass player is playing. I kind of analysed a lot of stuff that I go to see. You'd hear the notes, but you wouldn't necessarily hear what they were. So I said, why don't you just change the bass drum pattern a little bit? We'll add a bit more low end on it, jack it up in the mix a bit, and just play around with the song. So we kind of do that. Bit of fuzz, bit of delay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do you find it's generally received by the blues crowd or the blues fraternity?
It's mixed. If they get funny about it, I just refer them to the John Spencer Blues Explosion or said him before, Hound Dog Taylor. And if they can't accept Hound Dog Taylor, I don't want to know them.
Yeah. I mean, do you get at places where you don't get accepted on blues gigs?
Initially, before we start, but once we get going, we've never had a problem. Germany's the toughest market because it's you have played here before with a trio, now you have a duo. What is going on? Are you ripping us off or something? And it's just like, no, we're having more fun than we did before. So it's just a matter of convincing people. Some people listen with their eyes and not their ears.
What we're talking about, and to an extent, is conservatism in blues music.
Yeah.
So, do you find the Europeans are more conservative or less conservative than the Brits?
It's kind of a bit of a mixture, really. Some people will keep an open mind, and other people don't. So it's a pretty even balance, really. We have to talk people into everything, so whether they're English or whatever. It kind of depends on what they listen to as well, because quite often they're listening to this sort of stuff anyway without a bass player.
Yeah.
And they don't know it.
Yeah.
So.
Of course, the younger groups that we get now have probably got a different perspective on the blues anyway. They're not starting at the same place that you and I would have started.
No. They don't really go back as far as they should. They'll hear an influence from, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, like Stevie Ray or someone who, great players, and I love them. I got all their records. But you got to kind of go back to, you got to listen to where they're coming from and what.
Yeah, a lot of kids now, young people say, oh, well, I listened to my dad's record collection and I started listening to Eric Clapton and Peter Green.
Yeah.
And as you say, they were great players, but they started, of course, by listening to the,
Ron
Johnson and all the stuff.
And when you listen to the original versions of those songs, and then you go back to listening to the covers, the versions they started off with, sometimes you can see that there's definitely, what were those guys doing, really? Because it was such a good song to start off with.
Yeah. Well, I remember Eric Clapton being interviewed in the 70s and always saying that his versions of Freddie King were nowhere near as good as Freddie King's originals,
Yeah,
and he was right, really.
I got into Freddie King through Eric Clapton, and I loved all that stuff, and I'm glad I discovered it through somebody, and it might as well be through him. But when I listen to Freddie King and watch the videos and see him on YouTube or whatever, everything else seems so white and not real. It's like, okay, well, that's your interpretation of it, but
Freddie King was the man, I think.
Oh yeah, the Sugar Bowl. Yeah. That video. That's you can't get any better than that.
Now, I was fortunate because around here in North London in the 60s, there were loads of venues. I mean, on a typical Friday night, or Saturday night, there were within sort of a bus ride of this flat, half a dozen places where I could go and hear live music. And there was Jimmy Powell's Five Dimensions that Rod Stewart was playing in. Cream played down the road there at Wood Green Jazz Club. The Pretty Things played in Edmonton.
That would have been so good.
And we saw all those. And I saw John Lee Hooker, and I saw Buddy Guy, and I saw Memphis Slim. But the one guy I missed that I had the chance to see was Freddie King.
Oh.
And I've always regretted that, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I played a show in somewhere in Buckinghamshire. I can't remember where it was, and they had Freddie King there back in the 70s, and they said, you know, Freddie King played this room. And wow.
Yeah.
You know.
I saw Little Walter as well at the Manor House, which is about 3 miles from here.
Oh, right.
It wasn't very good, I've got to say. It was completely sloshed at the time.
Yeah, I was going to say, mate, it had a couple of bevies.
Yeah. So take us right back to when you started out, when you started playing guitar. What started you off, really?
My brother had a guitar that he wouldn't let me touch.
Mm-hmm.
I fantasised about it for about 3 years, and my mother finally relentlessly gave in to my constant nagging of getting a guitar, so she spent that whole $10 on a Belmont acoustic guitar at the junk shop on the corner, 100 yards away from where we used to live, and I had this heap of junk with the action that was like that off the neck. And I just learned how to play on that. I started off with the children's guitar guide. I was 12 years old, by Happy Traum, and just teach you how to play a few basic chords and pick. And I never heard of him for many years after that. In fact, it was only about 3 weeks ago I was on YouTube and I was watching an instructional video of Happy Traum doing some Big Bill Brunsey, and I thought, that is so cool, I'm glad I started off with him.
He's written an awful lot of good tutorials, actually. Very good player, So you picked up the guitar. Who was your kind of first role model, would you say, on the guitar?
George Harrison, I'd say. The first concert I went to with Chuck Berry in 75, I guess. He came to Adelaide, played the Apollo Stadium, and it just blew me away. I took the sheet music to the gig because I wanted him to sign it, and I didn't get him to do that, which was really a shame.
Yeah.
At that stage I didn't know how to hang out and sneak in the back door and catch your hero,
Yeah.
So I could do that now, probably, but...
So, was there a guitar player after George Harrison that you wanted to emulate?
I guess the first solo that really hit me was the solo when I saw her standing there, and then it was Rock Around the Clock. I kind of went backwards, So I started off with this 50s rock and roll. This was in the early 70s, and I went through the 50s and 60s in the space of 2 years, just digesting everything that I could. Then I got into Rory Gallagher. We were playing in my mother's garage, and we had a visitor from the police because we were a bit loud, and some of the people, our neighbours were a mile away, we must have been pretty loud.
Yeah.
But I had a good stack of Marshalls then. One of the neighbours came over and said, I heard you playing, have you heard such and such, and Rory Gallagher? And I said, no. And so he lent me some records. I've still got them. I've got to give them back one day. But while I was playing the 50s and 60s stuff, I was like in this cabaret band, 60-40 band they call in Adelaide.
Yeah.
And we were playing a lot of Mersey beat stuff, Freddie and the Dreamers, Beatles and some Stone stuff as well. And a friend of mine that I was playing in the band with said, I want to take you to see a blues band tonight. Yeah. And I went, blues, that's old stuff, that for old people, And so he took me up there into the Adelaide Hills in Aldinga at the Pump House Hotel, and it just changed my life instantly. The next day I was a blues guy, and down the local record store, and he was pulling these albums out. You got to buy this one. Clapton, Blues Breakers, John Mayall. And we played that weekend at the place we played at the week before.
Right.
And we were suddenly a blues band now. And the owner of it was a restaurant we were playing at. He comes, he's pulling his hair out. I go, "What are you doing? What are you doing? You were so good last week, and this week you're terrible. What are you playing?" It's like, "We're playing the blues, sorry." So it's the last time we played there, but
yeah, never mind.
That's cool.
Seems to have done okay. But I mean, you basically had the grounding in all of the kind of popular music.
Yeah, so I grew up with pop music of the 50s and 60s, and my father listened to big band stuff, and so I had Glenn Miller and Benny Goodman, which I watched those movies last week, in the background through my life. He listened to a lot of weird stuff too, Gilbert and Sullivan. Something about that.
I mean, getting to get to what it is that kind of undergirds this particular album now, because we obviously hear a lot of the latest stuff from all the guitar trios and that.
Yeah.
And it seems to be purely rooted in blues and groove music, but this seems to draw on a lot of pop music influences.
There's some pop there.
There are hook lines in the songs, which is very unusual in this day and age.
Yeah, well, I like songwriters. I really like Steve Earle, John Hyatt, Tom Petty, Woody Guthrie. Those guys that really know how to communicate a story through not only the lyrics, but they're so intelligent guitar parts that aren't flash, but they're interesting. So I think Mike Campbell is probably the world's greatest guitar player at the moment. Mike Campbell.
I'll have to catch up on him. I haven't caught up with him
from
yet.
Tom Petty's band.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I mean, he's so soulful, and he kind of gets a little bit buried in the background a little bit. But if you listen to the guitar parts on the Tom Petty stuff, I don't think anybody else could do that.
Classic pop songs as well.
But if he dies, I'm available.
Yeah.
Tom.
Yeah. Okay. Right, let's talk.
I don't want him to die or anything. Okay. Well, I had a vision. I wanted to be plugged into a radiogram and call it Radiogram.
Yeah.
Just for something a little bit quirky. Mm-hmm. So I put a post out on Facebook hunting England for an old radiogram, and a guy came back to me that afternoon, and he lived around the corner from me.
Yeah.
So I went round his place and we took some photos in his spare room, and then I kind of knocked it up in Photoshop, and if you look very closely at it, it's got the record wear mark in both sides of the sleeve. So I went online and downloaded, somebody's had scanned a very popular album, very famous album from 1968, and it was only one colour, and I don't want to say what it was, and they'd scanned that and it had the wear mark in it, and they'd separated it and did the whole thing. So I nicked it off the internet.
Yeah.
And I just placed it on there and did all that stuff. So then I had the cover sort of done within about a week or so, and I didn't really know where to go with the rest of it. Because I started up my own record label, the distributor that we'd lined up proper, they needed an album cover to advertise this well in advance. So a friend of mine said he knew a graphic artist. So I went round his house. He lives 40 miles away from me, and I forgot to take the artwork with me. I forgot my computer. I left it at home, and I got round there empty-handed, and I only realised when I got outside the door. So I went, "Oh no!" But I'd sent him across a few photographs, and he sort of quickly knocked something up. Really nice guy, lives in Birmingham, and it was pretty good. And he said, "I'm going away for the weekend. I'll be back Tuesday. and we can finish it then. So in that time, I didn't have a gig that weekend, so I kind of got a little bit inspired and thought, I'll have a go at this. So I got onto YouTube and learnt how to use Illustrator, and I imported all these photos, and I just ended up designing the whole thing. Yeah. And then he got back on the Wednesday, he said, right, are you ready to come round? I said, well, I've finished it now. It was totally different to how what he'd come up with. And then he spent the next 45 minutes trying to talk me into getting a job as a graphic designer because he really liked it.
Yeah, it is very good. So
that's my first crack at it.
Yeah, excellent. And what about the photographs? Where do they come from?
We took those ourselves.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Wow.
We did the whole lot. I took the back one. And
a cohesive piece of work, I've got to say.
Well, I'm glad you like it. Thank you.
Let's talk about that lovely old guitar you've got sitting in your hand there.
Where?
Yeah, this
one.
Beauty
Forgot
here,
about it.
Tell us about it.
This is a 1936 National Duolian. I love vintage instruments more than new ones. I like to think that somebody in the 1930s, famous, might have played it. They might not have done. I bought it in a catalogue before the internet back in the 90s in Australia. I was living in Melbourne at the time, and somehow I got this catalogue in the mail of second-hand musical instruments, and it came from Queensland, and I just bought it sight unseen, basically, and it came rolling.
So Gwyn, we've talked about the vintage look of the artwork. Now tell us about that lovely vintage guitar you've got there.
Yeah, well, this is a 1936 National Duolian. It's a beautiful piece of history. I like to think that somebody famous might have played it, but who knows who might have had it. I bought it in a catalogue in the days before the internet from somebody in Queensland. I was living in Melbourne. They sent it down to me, and I pulled it out of the box, and I just couldn't believe what I was holding. It's been modified. It came from Mandolin Brothers in America, and traditionally they don't have a truss rod. They've got a very big neck to compensate for the string pressure. But Mandolin Brothers modified it. Apparently they drilled a hole right up the centre of it and put a graphite rod in it. So it wasn't as much money as it should have been if it was all original, but it's a lot more stable now to take on the road.
Right.
And stronger.
Yeah. Tell us about the amplification system.
Yeah, okay. I've got this old Barkus Berry pickup. My heroes on the national guitar are obviously guys like Son House, but there's contemporary players, Chris Whitley, John Campbell. They use this pickup, so I hunted around and I got a couple of them, and I plugged this into the guitar amplifier and played. And also I was in Leicester doing a gig, and a guy, I can't remember his last name, his name's Bob, great guitar builder. He
listening, Bob?
He made me a new, Bob, Bob the builder.
Yeah. Bob the guitar builder. Yeah.
He made me a new biscuit for it, which is the bridge, and he put a pickup under it, and I run two outputs out of this into various preamps and DIs and EQs and stuff. And I've got quite a intricate, elaborate pedal board with lots of stuff on it and lots of lines out into the PA, so I run a little mixer with 5 channels going out for the sound engineer so he doesn't mess up my sound like I have a habit of doing.
So you can get close to the acoustic edge of that instrument amplified, can you?
Yeah, I use a Fishman Aura Spectrum DI. I'm endorsed by Fishman, and with the undersaddle pickup they've kind of simulated a studio setup with expensive condenser microphones, and I've downloaded some user settings, and you can You can dial up. This is your guitar being mic'd up with a Neumann, U87 or whatever, and it sounds great. But I also use this with a fuzz pedal and some delay and stuff going through my little tube amp. And I use a volume pedal to bring that in and out. So I'll have this big, clean acoustic sound, and then suddenly it's going to sound like Jimi Hendrix.
Wow!
So yeah. At least I think it does.
Yeah. Because the album opens with a really nice slice of that guitar, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Is that amplified or is that purely acoustic?
No, that was a microphone in somebody's spare room.
Gwyn Ashton has an amazing collection of vintage guitars, far too many to talk about all of them at the moment, but just tell us about a couple of the really interesting things in your collection.
I've got a 61 Strat that used to belong to a guy called Mick Jurd in Adelaide, who was in a band called Fraternity.
Yeah.
And that was Bon Scott's band before he joined AC/DC.
Right. And
when he left, Jimmy Barnes took his place from a band called Cold Chisel, who hadn't yet evolved, because this was about 1972 or something. And Mick was a great guitar player in Adelaide, very jazz-influenced blues player. Adelaide had an amazing jazz and blues scene in the 70s, in the 60s and 70s. Very progressive. A lot of the musicians moved from Adelaide to Melbourne or Sydney because they're the bigger cities. That's where the music scene was. But Adelaide, in those days, was an incredible breeding ground of some of the best musicians in Australia. So Fraternity was one of those bands. They all moved on to different bands, different states, and I got that in 1979, and it's my white 61 Strat, and it's kind of my groupie guitar because I've got everybody's signatures on it that I played with. So I've got Rory Gallagher, Buddy Guy, Albert Collins, quite a few people that have passed on.
Quite a good pension plan, that as well, isn't it?
Oh, look, I've got Hank Marvin, Dick Dale, Peter Green, Johnny Winter, Nigel Tufnell, B.B. King, which was the day B.B. King told me off for being late. I arranged to meet him in his hotel when he came to Melbourne, and I couldn't find a car park. I was driving all over the place, and I got there and he wasn't there, and I went home, rang back up again, and he said, "You got to learn punctuality, boy." Can I come down and get your autograph now? Yeah, I was younger then.
Yeah. Still, parking is a bit of a nightmare, isn't it?
Oh, it was horrible. I was just driving around. And I was there on time. I just couldn't.
It hasn't got any better though, has it? It's
no.
Far, far worse. Any other guitars you've got?
Oh, I've got dozens. A 63 Strat that I love. I don't know anything about its history, but it's got a nice big neck. I've got my signature guitar, which is a lute art, made in Italy. I designed the guitar. They sent me an email and said, "We'd like to make your signature guitar." And I said, "Well, I haven't got any money. I can't afford that." And they said, "We'll build it for you, and you tell us what you want and we'll give it to you." So that's got a Bigsby bridge on it. That's on the inside of the album, actually.
Yeah, that's that guitar there.
There it is, my baby.
Yeah. I designed the advertisement for this guitar as well, actually.
You said that before.
Yeah.
I wanted a guitar that I could emulate some of my heroes. So I wanted the telly in the bridge so I could get kind of a Lowell George thing. A P90 in the front so I could get early Johnny Winter, when he had the old Firebird, and a lipstick tube in the middle. And it sounds awesome. It's a really good guitar.
Yeah, excellent.
Okay. But I've got a collection of K's, Airline, about 60 guitars, I guess.
And I think you just won a rather special 12-string on eBay, you were saying.
Yeah, that was a bit of an accident, really. I'm in a quest for I'm in a 12-string zone at the moment in my mind. I've been watching a little bit of a guy called Leadfoot on YouTube, and I got myself a Taylor 12-string, which is really nice to play some slide on. I guess it's all going back to Lead Belly anyway. And I got on YouTube last week, and I thought, I just punched in Lead Belly, and up came this Silvertone slotted headstock 1960 12-string in Nashville, and it was like $450 or best offer. So I went, I'll just offer $300 for it, and I got it.
Yeah.
He said yes, and I went, oh, okay.
There's been some good 12-string players. I mean, Blind Willie McTell comes to mind.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And the guy who made that album, The Resurrection of Blind Joe Death, was that John Fahey? Do you know him? John Fahey? He's pretty good. And there's Leo Kotka.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he's fantastic.
There's a few specialists on 12. So we're going to look forward to hearing you on a 12-string on the future album, are we?
Yeah. I've got a few ideas sort of in the pipeline.
Great.
For some acoustic stuff. So it's gonna get quirky. The next album, I think. Yeah.
I'm finding out just who you really are. Did you think that you would get this far? I gotta tear myself away from you. I have no idea what you're trying to do. You got me down on my bended knees. I don't wanna fall in love like this. I held on way too long with just one kiss. Found it much too hard to resist, but I don't wanna fall in love. Don't wanna fall in love like this.
Yeah. So what sort of stuff do you listen to when you're listening to music generally?
Wow, I've got quite an intensive, eclectic sort of thing going on. At the moment, I'm kind of in a Ry Cooder, Ben Harper, David Lindley zone, Chris Whitley. I've kind of almost given up listening to a lot of electric players because nobody really does it for me anymore, apart from Sonny Landreth. Since Lowell George isn't around anymore, and Roy Buchanan, Lonnie Mack, well, my heroes are kind of not around anymore in the electric sphere of things. So I've been listening to more acoustic stuff. I try to find something that's quite deep and not something that would probably be played on the radio. If I do listen to electric stuff, I love Billy Gibbons. And the guy from the Black Keys, Dan somebody or other. I should know his name, I can't remember now. I love Luther Dickinson, I think he's great. The stuff he does with the Black Crowes now and North Mississippi All-Stars.
I see you posted on Facebook recently about watching the Benny Goodman story and listening to that music. Do you like listening to that old music as well?
It's not only the music, but it's just the mentality of it. And it's the integrity those big band leaders had, because they were all of them. The similarities were quite incredible because they were all chasing their own sound. They didn't quite know what it was until they got it. And I really admire all of those guys, and just the way the bands used to play together, no matter what. You know, you read Tommy Shannon was saying, you know, when he was playing with Stevie Ray Vaughan, for instance, they'd be going out as a band and they'd sleep on pool tables, you know, when they went somewhere. And it's like, bands wouldn't do that now. They're too soft, you know. Give me a hotel or I'm not going on the road, you know. You know, I don't want to sleep on a pool table particularly. But...
Well, actually, they may have been younger, you know.
Well, probably, yeah.
There comes a point when you do feel you need a little bit of comfort.
Yeah. Well, I do like a hotel now, but I just love the camaraderie that the older musicians had, and I don't see a lot of these indie bands around at the moment going through that because they're trying to develop their craft. Because I don't want to slag anybody off or anything, but the indie stuff isn't really about playing. It's about a lot of strumming and getting a nice haircut. You know?
Yeah, but the other thing is, of course, when you talked about your musical background, you had the opportunity to hone your craft playing in the dance 60/40 band that you mentioned, various other things, and the whole kind of range of popular music that was going on at the time.
Yep.
And we all did the same. I mean, I used to gig in various bands in North London, and you'd play for 2 hours minimum wherever you played, and you'd have to do all the current pop stuff. That kind of gig circuit for people is not there for them to learn anymore in the way that we did in those days, I don't think.
I mean, I've only been here 16 years, but I've seen a lot of places close down, which were intermediate type venues. Yeah. Now you got the really little ones that you don't play too loud, you know, and you got the really big ones. It's just like, can you pull 700 people?
Yeah,
or 1,000 or 8,000, whatever. But the 200-300 seaters don't. There aren't a lot of those. The Flower Pot in Derby's great, and the Musician in Leicester.
So how do you see the future of kind of this, what we call blues and roots music, all that sort of thing?
Well, I mean, the internet's come along and it's destroyed the music industry, but it's not going to go away in the foreseeable future, and I think we can use it to our own advantage as well. I think the whole scene's changing. We have to stay a little bit positive about it. We do now have the power to present our music all over the world instantly, which is a good thing, and it's a bad thing as well because so many people are doing it, even if they're not very good. So to get your thing noticed through all the other stuff is where the difficulty lies, I think. It's a bit of a do-it-yourself culture now. In previous times we made records, now we make demos that we sell, you know, and that's bloody good demos, some of them, you know.
Yeah. I mean, do you think we can counter the X Factor culture and all that goes with it?
Yeah, I think people will get sick of it eventually, but unfortunately people think that that's what the music industry is, and it isn't. It's poisoning people's minds, I think. But, you know, real artists will always come through somehow, because there's always going to be people to play to that want some honest music and that can see through all the garbage. And it's, in a way, a recession. I guess it is a bit of a recession. It weeds out all the part-timers and the people that don't really have much to say, and it gets a bit too difficult for them, and so hopefully they give up. And then real musicians that actually deserve to be seen, hopefully will get a bit of a pull through the jungle of crap.
And hopefully the recent change in the licensing laws will help
that should
encourage a few more people.
I did my first professional gig in 1975, and I haven't left the road since then. So, I don't know, 30 years or something. 75, 85, 95, 2005. Oh, gee.
36 years, 37 years.
Yeah. No wonder I'm so tired.
Yeah. How many gigs do you reckon? Got any idea?
I've no idea. Some years I've done 300 gigs, I suppose. It doesn't really slow down. And the passion for it never gets any less. You know, well, when I was 12 years old, I wanted to play guitar more than anything else, and that guitar became my best friend. Through all the crap that happened in my life when I was a kid to all the crap that happens in my life now. So the desire has to be there. You know, you have to develop a work ethic, and you have to try to be smart and work out how to get your stuff through. And it changes every few years. There aren't any rules, regulations, you know, there's no how to become a rock star, you know, in a book. You know, there's nothing like that.
Well, have you got any tips you'd give to a kind of struggling band or young people
trying
to
start
a band? Yeah, do something else.
Bother. There's enough competition out there now. No, keep on. Just don't give up, you know, just... Like my mother was my biggest instigator, and when she knew what I wanted to do, she said, just go all out for it, you know. Put all your eggs in one basket. You know, I hear so many people say, well, you know, you should have a few things going on. It's just like, no, because that dissipates the focus, and you don't have any energy beam when you've got too many things. If you're in too many bands... That's what I see these days. Everybody wants to be a session musician. Everybody wants to be popular with everybody, and everybody wants to play with everybody else. And I've always thought, well, if John Lennon did that, he'd be out there playing with the Stones, he'd be out there playing with Jimi Hendrix, that there wouldn't be any bands, you know, formed, you know, with focus. You know, they just... It's a very me, selfish society these days. You know, I find. With a few bands that want to stick together and do something. But it never used to be like that. It's a shame. Because there are a lot more talented, technically, musicians now than there used to be. But the I don't know what it is. A lot of them don't have anything to say, even if they're really good at it. I think also one big thing...
That is the problem, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, one big thing is YouTube, which is fantastic. Now, when I was a kid, you'd go and see a band, or you'd go and see a concert, or you go and see whoever, and you go, wow, that's great, and you'd be really inspired by it, and you go home... and you try to remember what you saw, but you're not going to remember it. But you're going to do something that's maybe along the same lines, and you'll write a song, right? And then you might, a few years later, you might hear again what you saw, and you go, "Wow, that's nothing like what I just played," but I've come up with something of my own, right? Now with YouTube, it's creating. Well, it has the ability to create generic production line players, like music schools do the same thing. I don't believe in music schools. I think they're all a waste of time. I shouldn't say that because I teach at some of them. I love music schools. No, and it's just teaching you to be a clone of this person or that person. You know, here, look, I've learnt the new Stevie Ray Vaughan. Like, you know, this is what he played on Texas Flood, or whatever. But if I went and saw Stevie Ray Vaughan, and I go home and I try and play something around it, and I come up with...
Or you put the record on and you move the needle over. And
yeah. We used to do that all the time. It's just, how did he do that bit? And you slow it down from, 33 1/3 to 16. You get an octave lower, and it was.
Yeah, it's funny because you're talking about institutions, and the people come out now with their songwriting diploma or their guitar diploma.
Oh,
you're right, they do get taught to play. They do get taught to play the Stevie Ray Vaughan style, and they learn it note for note.
Yeah.
You know, but I just don't know. It doesn't seem to.
So there's no individuality in it.
Anything new,
you're not finding your own voice, and you're finding your own way. And I think the instant gratification part of society today is really hurting musicians' development. As they're becoming better musicians, but they're not really becoming their own individual voice.
Have you got a songwriting diploma?
What's that?
Me neither. Bob Dylan didn't have one either, did he?
No.
So, you know.
And, if Bob Dylan and all those guys were around and they're starting out now, nobody would listen to them. Because all the radio is focus groups. The public are now being asked what they want to hear. Instead of a radio presenter's job is to illuminate the public. The radio presenter is supposed to be a person who knows more than the people out there that are the general public. And the general public are supposed to listen to a DJ and go, this guy is an expert. He's going to turn me on to something that I've never heard before. Yeah. And that's an old way of thinking, and it's a great way of thinking. And now they go around interviewing people on the street, what do you think of this person? Well, I like the way she wears her dress, and it's just like... Yeah. Where's the substance in the music? Yeah. And it's all money and accountants and...
Well, there are a few around like that, but they're gradually being closed down, aren't they, those sort of people?
Yeah, there's a great movie called Before the Music Dies, and it's on YouTube. I bought a copy of the DVD in Austin, Texas. It's made by a couple of guys, went around America interviewing musicians and people, and it's an incredible eye-opener on the American music industry, and it's the same here, How you can just take somebody off the street because they look right, they don't have to sing, you've got auto-tune, and it's all chopped, copied, pasted, cut, split, and done in a studio, and you come out with an incredible video of this good-looking girl that can't sing, that's been auto-tuned, and it sounds half decent.
Yeah. Well, there are no songs anymore, are there? There's no really good new songs coming out. I don't hear them anyway. Not on the pop charts anyway.
No, there's catchy, silly melodies that will appeal to humans' basic sort of instinct. That they know how to sort of put a song together that has some kind of emotion in your head, but it's nothing in pop music that really is very imaginative anymore or artistic. It's definitely smells of the greenback,
yeah. Well, it's all a bit depressing, that sort of thing, but let's just looking back.
Well, I hope somebody plays that on the radio.
Yeah, well, let's hope so. Yeah. Internet radio, at least, is where things are beginning to happen, isn't it? Career highlights so far.
Okay. Well, there's been a few. I got to do a gig with Junior Wells, Albert Collins, Rory Gallagher. This was before I left Australia. Mick Fleetwood rolled up into a gig one night and we played some old Fleetwood Mac stuff till 6 o'clock in the morning in Adelaide in 1991. I got to tour with Status Quo in 99 all around England. We did 15 shows with them or something. Got to do gigs all manner of places around Europe with B.B. King, Peter Green, Mick Taylor, Robin Trower, Jeff Healey, Dan Baird, Johnny Winter. I played with him last week in Finland. His band joined me on stage. That was a great night. To the guys on the CD, Robbie Blunt, who's a great guitar player, lives around the corner from me. I live near Kidderminster, and that was a really musical town back in the 60s and 70s. A lot of good stuff from there. Stan Webb and Mike Sanchez and all those people, and Robbie. And so that's the area. Sort of Black Sabbath, Judas Priest, Zeppelin. All those guys are from that area, and I get to hang out with some of them. It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
So that playing with the Rory Gallagher guys as well, with Jerry McAvoy, Brendan O'Neill, Ted McKenna, Mark Felton.
What about your ambitions? What are you looking forward to?
I want to write better stuff. I want I want to play. I mean, just the usual thing. When you're 12 years old, you just want to get really good at whatever you play. You know, guitar, drums, whatever. I want to continue to strive to get better at what I do, write better songs, sing better, go to places that I've never been before. There's still a big world out there to conquer.
Yeah.
I'd like to play in China, India, Russia. Yeah, I don't care.
There's a lot to go for yet then.
Just give me a big bus and just pack my lunch and send me away.
Okay, well, Gwyn Ashton, well done on producing a really top quality album.
Oh, thank you.
And congratulations on continuing to fly the flag for real music along with all.
Well, it's a tough life. Yeah. I got to add that even though we tracked all the instruments ourselves, I did have it mixed in America.
Yeah.
By a guy called Justin Hoffer, who's a Lost Prophets producer, who's quite a big band here. Oh. I'm not a mixing engineer. I can't do everything. So he did a great job.
Yeah. Good album. We wish you every success with it, and wish you every success for the future.
Fantastic.
Thank you for coming to North London.
Beautiful.
Cheers.
I'm rolling into Hamburg. I've been away for oh so long. Been traveling around this countryside, so far from my home. I'm a million miles from your sweet smile, but you're always on my mind. Don't you know that you make me feel like the fortunate kind? Planes and trains and driving, I've clocked up many miles. I close my eyes and all I see is your sweet smile. Well, I love the life I'm living. I didn't leave my love behind. Don't you know that you make me feel like the fortunate kind?